We're just in pause here until we make sure we're streaming. All right, I think we are good, right? We're good? Here we are. I can hear me. Okay. All right, let's call our South Kingstown School Building Committee meeting to order at 6:34 on Thursday, January 9th. And we will do a roll call. We have Dave Palizzetti. He's here. Technical difficulties. Brian Sylvia.
Here.
Bob Littlefield.
Here.
Brian Mahoney.
Here.
Kate Massananti, I'm here. Luke Murray.
Here.
Chip McGarr.
Here.
And we have Jim Manny.
Here.
And we have Terrence Connolly from Left Field at the table with us. And we have Gil Bain, we have Studio Jade, and a handful of community members. So thank you for joining us. New business item number 2. We do have a couple of public correspondence that I've shared with the committee. Both of them were related to each other, and they both revolved around the school building projects, HVAC. The first one is from Elizabeth Hoy, requesting we reconsider and reopen the discussion around geothermal. She shared quite a bit of information with us about cost, and would like for us to revisit the concept. And we have our next one, same concept and viewpoint from Mr. Beasley. Basically, again, wanting to reopen the discussion around the actual cost savings or whatnot. So I have a question that I'm going to pose to the committee is, do we want to discuss this topic based on the correspondence we received, or do we want to, the conversation really isn't ours to reopen, it's the town council's, but do we want to have the discussion at this table at this point under public correspondence, or should we make it an agenda item at our next meeting? Luke, I look at you.
I guess pragmatically, we're going to be back at council on Monday on this topic. So I guess it probably makes more sense to discuss it now, since we don't get past the decision, and just it doesn't seem courteous to push it off.
So what I can do here is, I can read the correspondence. I know I did forward them to our PM, our construction manager, and Studio Jade. Basically, it's looking at what the actual cost, long-term life cycle cost, and then any sort of, between the two of them, it comes down to cost and tax reimbursement rates. I'm not really sure how to go about handling the topic. So we have 2 community members who would like for us to kind of revisit, relook at the cost savings and go over them. I know, Dave, you were included specifically on one of them, and your opinion was asked on it. I don't know if you want to share your thoughts based on the information that was shared with us.
It works now. Now, thanks. I had just ran from work, so my brain is not fully transitioned over right now.
Yep.
But I'm willing to discuss it further if we want to do that tonight, or we could make it an agenda item. Luke's probably right. We should probably talk about it now.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, Phil. Apologies. So we have here specifically, it says Studio Jade has calculated 20-year life cycle cost comparison between the two systems, and kind of the discussion around the comparison of the cost versus long-term costs, and as far as the units would need to be replaced after 20 years with geothermal, probably wouldn't, right? So it kind of exploring that sort of longevity with the systems. Like I said, I'm not really sure how to go with this because we had the discussion, we pushed the topic to the town council. Town council kind of gave their opinion on it. So unless this topic is going to be reopened at the council level, I'm not sure what more we can say as a school building committee.
Sure. So let me begin by saying that I agree that a geothermal system is slightly more efficient. We indicated that in our life cycle cost analysis. But it is not more efficient enough to overcome the initial cost without some type of other subsidy, for example. Those subsidies allegedly and currently exist. And if the town council wanted to pursue them, then they could. To overly simplify this issue, for all intent and purpose at this stage of a project, the cost for equipment is about the same. The delta, the difference, comes in the additional cost to drill the wells. That is the decision of the bodies. Is it worth that investment for, yes, a little bit more efficiency, but technically not long enough, or not enough. When it comes to replacing equipment, with proper maintenance, the proper installation, the commissioning that we're going to be doing on a new building, this equipment should last easily 25 years. But yes, you will be replacing a number of things on this building after 25 years. We are replacing a well field in the Mid-Atlantic region that we did 30 years ago. So a well field, depending upon the geology and what happens, does not go to 50 years automatically. We're replacing one in 30 years. So there will be major costs after 25 years that this town should plan on. But I'll stand by what we've said in that, yes, geothermal is a little bit more efficient, but not efficient enough to offset the initial cost.
Does anybody else at the table want to share their opinion or their thoughts on this particular topic?
All right, my brain's waking up again, sorry. So I agree with what Phil's saying, and we're seeing the same thing. It's really the key is those incentives. If the incentives happen, geothermal is the way to go. What we're running into now with a lot of unknowns after January 20th, we have other concerns with this project that make me nervous about spending a lot of money up front. As much as I love geothermal, I used to teach a class on sustainability. I love the concept. I think it's awesome. But my bigger concern is delivering a project for this town that's going to last and achieve the goals of the program for the school department, which is, I think, our primary charge here. And we have the potential for tariffs, say what you want. We have the potential for a longshoreman strike. We have potential for international trade routes being disrupted with Panama Canal, whatever. They're unknowns. They're always unknowns, but there's a lot of unknowns right now, and there's a lot of concern for the cost of materials. And the cost estimators that I'm talking to are putting that into their cost estimates because it's an unknown. And I would not like to see us use up whatever contingency we have set aside now for the possibility of the incentives staying true, the possibility of these market increases not happening, and putting the risk on the town on a financed project. And because it's financed and the time value of money, the outlays we're putting in now are just going to cost that much more by the time we pay the debt on them. So personally, if this is my checkbook, and I kind of look at taxpayer money as my money, and when I spend it, I don't spend it, just haphazardly. I personally wouldn't make the decision to spend additional capital now if I can get an HVAC system that is almost as efficient at a much lower initial cost. It does kick the can on the road for operational costs. I understand that. But there's bigger concerns of us 6 months from now waking up to a cost estimate we can't afford. And then we start talking about shrinking classrooms, shrinking auditoriums, shrinking cafeterias, eliminating program that doesn't deliver what the taxpayers asked us to do.
I was initially really attracted to this possibility until I listened to Phil's presentation, and what it made clear is that, as Dave just articulated, there are a lot of unknowns. If we went this route, one thing, however, that we do know are the programmatic sacrifices that we would have to make in order to outlay our initial investment. And we promised the community that we would give them a high school that everyone can be proud of, that is going to meet our programmatic needs, and we're going to be within budget. And so I feel that in order to live up to that promise, we have to go with a conventional system.
Okay. So, sitting on this committee for over 2 years now, one thing I've learned is there are things I know and things I don't know. Energy is not something I know. So what do? I rely on people that we trust to give us an opinion so we all can make a well-informed decision. And I feel we have made a well-informed decision. But one of the areas that keeps coming up is that, recruitment and retention is one of the top priorities to building this new high school. And the things that we're struggling with that we're going to talk about tonight, the chorus room, the balconies, the stuff that is very attractive to a new high school that will recruit students to come maybe from other communities and retain the ones that we have. Those are the most important things, one of the most important things to me when I make a well-informed decision on what we need. We have many decisions to make. From what I've heard and talked to with these subject matter experts, a geothermal well was attractive. But when you get right down to it with the subject matter experts, Phil and people like Dave. Dave's opinion meant a lot to me because this is what he does. This is the stuff he does. And if they're saying, I don't feel comfortable with it, well, then how could I feel comfortable with it? So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So Jim stole my thunder on the first part, which is, do we trust our consultants to give us the information? And I do. Phil's team has stuck with us for the past couple of years. I trust their team. If they're telling the building committee, I don't think they knew the goal here. Flush it out. We spent $100,000 doing a test well, a report. We didn't do that to come up with the answer and the alternative. We came at it on a data-driven model to come up with the right decision, which they're telling us it may not make sense. It doesn't make sense, right? The second is sustainability. So I think some of us are hung up on the idea, and I was too. I like the idea of geothermal. I'd love to tell people we have it here. But is that necessarily the only way to achieve sustainability? They are both electrified systems. They require pumps, circulation, everything that functions the system. It's heat transfer. Phil pointed this out at the last meeting. It's heat transference. So whether you get that heat from the ground or the air, it doesn't matter. So what is sustainability? Sustainability on that zero isn't heat transference. It's the energy put into the system, which is electric. So we offered an alternative to that. I think if we're going to focus on sustainability, you worry about the electric to the building, which we haven't even really fully pivoted to photovoltaic, which is the real crux of the thing, and how do we offset the energy expenses and reduce the energy consumption. So I would suggest, instead of at some point we need to pivot, but that doesn't mean we pivot off sustainability. I think it means we keep our eye on the ball and figure out alternative ways to achieve the sustainability. But I think geothermal is just an emblematic thing. Like, you want it because it represents sustainability, but that actually may not be the best alternative. In design, you often start with one sort of thing you fall in love with, and then sometimes you pivot and you realize the design you come out with was actually better than where you started. So regardless of where this goes, I just ask everyone, including the community, that keep an open mind, because it doesn't mean we abandon the idea of a sustainable high school.
And I agree with my fellow members up here. A lot of great topics were brought up, and I just want to highlight too that we picked experts from the beginning of this project. Studio Jade from the beginning, and then for the second stage was Studio Jade and Slam, Gilbane and Left Field, who are doing projects all over the country, in Gilbane's case all over the world, and we're all having in-depth discussion on this, and they're doing projects, like I said, all over the world, seeing the market, seeing our project as a whole, not just the electrification. So I have confidence in our experts and what they've brought forward to us, and I definitely feel like they've done their due diligence on this matter.
Anybody else want to chime in? The only thing that I will say is that we are the school building committee, and we're here for our schools, and to make sure we're building, to Dave and Bob and everybody else's point, our goal is our school programs. It would have been great to embrace the geothermal piece, but to Luke's point and to everybody else's point, we've not abandoned sustainability. We've done our due diligence. Again, I'm gonna echo everybody else. We picked particular people and put them in particular roles because we trust them. You're the experts. I defer to you often on many of the topics, and just as I would defer to Dr. McGarr when it comes to our programs, and I defer to Brian when it comes to our actual facilities. So I'm comfortable with the decision that was made, but again, this does fall at the town council level. If they decide they want to reopen that discussion, I believe it is up to them. But from a school building committee perspective, I maintain that we're doing our due diligence to make sure we're giving our students and this community a school building that has the proper facility to support our programs. And we've given our folks in their architectural positions direction. So to me, unless the town council asks us to pivot, then I don't see this committee giving any other direction from there. So unless someone wants to speak on that. So what I'm going to do is go a little bit out of order, and I'm going to open community comment for this topic because folks who authored these letters are here and I'm sure would like to voice their opinion on it. And then, Doral, we have to stick to the 3 to 5 minute window, please, because we do have other items on the agenda to hit. Thank you.
Mike, I'll give you a copy after we're done. Okay, actually, I think. Okay, so I have two questions that in my mind have not been answered. The first one has to do with where in our high school the present plan was going to use the geothermal energy. Now, in the plan, in the approaches, the two approaches that you were given, in both approaches, the geothermal energy was going to be used in the academic wing. not the community area, not the gymnasium and the auditorium and cafeteria. So when I've been looking through, when I've been searching online for the last months, looking at all this information, I came across the Watertown, Massachusetts High School, which is half built now. And they're using geothermal energy and roof-mounted chillers. Now, in their project, their roof-mounted chillers are on their academic wing because their reasoning is those rooms are not necessarily have to be at a certain temperature all the time. There are times when there's nobody in those rooms, you can turn the temperature way down. And they're using geothermal for the other part of the building, the community spaces, because geothermal is taking the ambient temperature of the ground beneath your feet and either raising the temperature if you need heat or using that temperature to cool warmer air. Now, so I have a question. My question is, one of these has to not be right. Okay? They both cannot be right. It's either better to use geothermal in community spaces that need to be more or less at a constant temperature 24/7 and use the chillers, roof-mounted chillers, for the areas where you don't need that. So I'm suggesting that this building committee take a trip up to Watertown, Massachusetts, and see for yourself. Go up there and look at it. Talk to the people. Because right now, I'm really confused. They can't both be right. The second thing is, on the presentation you were given, the first one, it showed 40 wells for a cost of $2.8 million. But when I read through the 30-some page report by the company that they had do the geothermal study, when I came across the page where it said 20 wells, 20 800-foot deep wells, are sufficient to provide 50% of the energy needed to cool half of 50% of our high school. So 20 wells are enough to supply the heating and cooling requirements of half of our high school. 20. But we're drilling 30 for quote-unquote redundancy issues. Now, if redundancy means at some point in time, if a wellhead pump fails and you go down a well or two and they have to come offline until you have them checked out, okay, but do you need 10 more wells? Do you need to drill 10 additional wells in the beginning? To me, that makes no sense. Why would you spend the money to build 10 additional wells, which is 50% more of what you need, what they say you need, to heat and cool half the school? To me, that doesn't make sense to me. And I'd like to hear more information about it. And I think that's something that you should be asking. Now, as far as the payback, the investment tax credits that you're all worried about. Yeah, we have a new administration coming, and you have people talking about Elon Musk and they're gonna blow everything up, it's all going to be a new ball game. But I'm going to tell you right now, U.S. car companies, people that this geothermal thing, it's not going away. If you go with the geothermal route and you apply for the investment tax credits, you would get that money back in about the year 2028, and it would be equal to at least 30, if not 40%, of the cost, the entire cost of the geothermal system. The entire cost. Okay? We're talking labor, materials, everything. Now, if you're going to say, oh, gee, we're worried about that, so we're not going to apply for it, then I'm asking you, why are you on this committee? Okay? You know how much money that is? Do you know how much money that is? It includes the ductwork. It includes everything. So if you have a $17 million project and you're going to get 30% or maybe 40% back in investment tax credits in 4 years, and you're not going to go for it, but you're worried about not being able to put the things in the building that you want, there's your money to do that. There's your money to have geothermal, and there's your money to keep your balcony and all the rest of it. I sent, in that email I sent you, that chart that shows what the four quadrants of what the people think are going to disappear on January 20th. The Section 45 investment tax credits are in the bottom left corner of the lowest possible things. Those things are not going away. We're not going to stop building electric cars, electric school buses, and on and on. So, I know you want to get going, and I'll give you give me another 30 seconds here.
You got 30 seconds,
Okay.
because you've already been like 10 minutes, so.
Okay, so so I've been at this now for 7 years, in my 8th year, right? And I've come to this point where there's two sayings that I keep thinking about: trust but verify, trust and verify, and penny wise and pound foolish. Okay, I want verification. I want the data. I want answers. Matter of fact, I asked in one of the emails I sent out, all I wanted was how many square feet of this high school is the academic wing, and how many is in the rest of it. I never got an answer. Okay? It couldn't be a simpler question. So if you want to, freeze me out, I'm not going away. And I hope the town councilors listen to this, because 30% or 40% of $17 million, come on, folks.
Thank you, Dorald.
I'll be
Can
really
I just
quick.
make one comment to that? And I just want to say to Dorald, we do appreciate his time. Again, I can speak from the schools department, and we worked together for many years with other topics other than the building project, and Dorald's come to the table. I just want to let you know you're not being frozen out, and if you could please email to the school building committee, we will publicly address everything. It'll all go up on our website, and if you could please send it to me and Kate in the school building committee email, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'll be really quick. So you all know I'm a member of the Sustainability Committee for the town. I'm also obviously a community member in the town. So it's really hard because from the Sustainability Committee point of view, geothermal makes 100% sense, right? But as a parent, as a community member, as a taxpayer, as a former educator, I understand the priorities. So actually all I wanted to say right now was that I really truly appreciate you all giving this the time and energy that you have been, and deliberating it and thinking about it deeply, and it makes the most sense environmentally speaking to go with geothermal, but that doesn't mean that we disregard the educational priorities and the economic realities. That's the word. So I just wanted to thank you. Just moving ahead with, if there are sustainability features that can also go for the IRA funding, if it's not yanked very quickly, I just urge you to keep that top of mind, and I'll just stay at these meetings so that I keep reminding you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else at the table have anything they want to say on the topic? All right. So moving on to our next business item. I put discussion for cumulative meeting minute update on here. We do not need to vote on that. I just wanted to give an update. We have been working diligently between the school district and Lafayette to get all of the past meeting minutes updated, posted to Rhode Island Secretary of State website, as well as Lafayette's website for this project. And my understanding is, as of today, there are only 3 meetings that are missing at the moment. They're in process. They're going to be posted, but my understanding is we're almost all caught up, minus 3 meetings that we're working on now. Can you hit your button?
The 3 meetings that are missing, they're missing recordings, so we have to go back and find notes and various things to try to, go back in time. And they're pretty old, so it's not like we can go with recent memory. So we are trying to figure out how to go back in time and get that information, find somebody who has notes from those meetings. But everything else is already posted, and we're up to speed. So. And those meetings may not have even taken place. There was one meeting that was 5 days away, I think in April, that I think was canceled, and because it was only 5 days away from the community forum. So the agenda was posted for the meeting, but it was canceled and replaced with the community forum. So somehow we have to put something onto the website saying that this meeting has been canceled and replaced with a community forum meeting. So there's a couple of weird things going on with the ones that are not posted yet.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And I'll take a look at those dates and kind of cross-reference them with the rest of the committee and see what we can do to help with the final 3. But
Great.
Thank you. New business item number 4, discussion action, next steps and further direction around PAYGO and cost reduction strategies from town council regarding project funding gap. So next steps. Luke, is this Brian is taking this, or how are we handling this one?
So Brian, did you have that presentation to just show? So we did have a discussion. The intent is to revisit PAYGO briefly at the next council member, as a reminder, just because PAYGO gets complicated very quick. We're trying to boil it down. And actually one of the suggestions I had was stop with the PAYGO terminology and call it, advanced reimbursement. And that's really because that's really what it is. It's advanced reimbursement. And it only means that we get it up front. They're not cutting us a check. It's a portion of what we pay out. So Brian, I think, was going to go over a brief presentation, and I think, the IT director. Let me take a look. He took out both TVs. Nice. All right, let me take a look. But Brian was going to do a presentation about PAYGO and really just to poke holes in it, to make sure that we're explaining it in a very simple fashion, in understandable fashion to not only the council but to the community, so everyone can have it in their mind as they're making these decisions. So as our IT team works.
So I know, right? We're just going to do a little pause here while we get back our technical.
I can see the headline now. How many committee members does
right?
it take?
Yeah.
Where's Terry Lynch when we need him?
It's checking sources right now. Looking for a source.
There we go. You're on, Brian.
So some of these slides were taken from a prior presentation. Again, just going into what PAYGO is. PAYGO is made available from, sorry, I got to make that change. The advanced reimbursement is made available through the School Building Authority of Rhode Island Department of Education. The town has been authorized for advanced reimbursement funding totaling $9,748,398. How PAYGO works, PAYGO is reimbursed on 35%, on the first 35% of expenditures. So to achieve the $9.7 million, the town would have to fund just under $28 million of project expenses to achieve that $9.7 million reimbursement.
Can I stop you right there? And so with this particular, so the reimbursement of 35%, which is our base reimbursement, and
Yes.
that's the max for that bucket of money.
Related to PAYGO.
Okay.
This is going to confuse the heck out of me.
Right.
But yes, related to advanced reimbursement. Once the project is completed and the town is able to achieve the other bonuses up to 50%, we would get the funding at that time. But related to PAYGO, I'm going to keep doing that. I'm just going to call it PAYGO.
For now, we'll call it PAYGO.
Thank you. But for the town has been authorized, PAYGO is only paid on the initial amount because bonuses are only achieved once the project is completed. So that's where you get the 9.7 on the 35%. But if bonuses are achieved up to 50%, we will get the final 15% once the project is completed.
So we're not losing any money.
No.
So suggestion on this,
Yes.
because once you start tossing numbers, it gets confusing quick.
Yes.
I would break it down to $1. We get 35 cents for every dollar we spend
Okay.
up to that number. Right?
Okay.
And that's all it should be on that slide.
Yeah.
Kate, may I? Brian, so is that spend or commit contractually the 28 million?
Spend.
Spend.
Yes.
So once we spend 28 million, we're eligible for 35% reimbursement through advanced reimbursement.
Yes. I should say too also,
If our then my question is, if our bonus rate brings us up to, say, 50%,
yes.
do we get the extra 15% of that 28 million?
Sorry. Yes, sorry.
Or is the 9.7 the only reimbursement we're going to get on that 28 million?
The 9.7 is the only thing we'd get up front, that as in the form of PAYGO.
But
The other funds, the 15% on the 28 million, we would get on an annual basis once the bond is issued.
okay, thanks.
I should say that's what I was going to add to the 9.7 million. That is a cap. The town does not have to issue the 9.7 in PAYGO. We can do less of that. We can do that's the up to amount.
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification. It's not 15% of the bonuses on the 28 million, it's 15% on the project.
Yeah, well, on this,
Right.
yeah.
So just think of it in terms of, forget about everything else, right? 35 cents for every dollar we spend and up to that amount. So our first flush of cash that goes out the door, we're getting that 35 cents per dollar. So we'll put in those reimbursements. So where it comes into play at the end is that you could feasibly bond less money because you've already paid the bills with that $9 million. So then you have an option when you get to the end of the rainbow. Do I continue to borrow the 150 and take that and allocate that money somewhere else? Or do I just not borrow it? Does that make sense? Okay.
Anybody else before he keeps going?
So this is the list of the approved projects. So the projects had to be approved by RIDE as part of the necessity of school construction, and this is what totals up to the 150 million. So you'll see the top two, 106 million for the school and 111 million for the athletic fields. That's the 117 that's been referred to many times as part of this project. And then the other buildings that we are eligible for reimbursements on. And then, again, the total there equals up to the 150 million.
So this is where I think we were having a question at our joint meeting, at our CIP meeting. Those other projects where you have the money allotted for Hazard, Broad Rock, PCL, Matunic, and West Kingston. So if the 50% reimbursement is on the high school project, those other 5, is that at 35%? Or because they were all part of the stage 2, those also would be at 50%?
They are eligible to be at 50%. So it depends when they're submitted. If we submit everything as a group with the high school, or we submit these projects after the high school is completed and the bonuses have been achieved, they're eligible for the 50%. If they are submitted for reimbursement in a year before the high school is completed, they're eligible for 35%.
I want to make clarification on that. That doesn't mean we're ineligible for that 15%. We just don't get that 50%.
No, actually, I checked on that today. If you submit for reimbursement
Really?
on these projects beforehand, that's it.
You have to submit as a group?
Well, no, if you submit, say we do a project at the Hazard Building this year, and you submit it for reimbursement, we're eligible for 15%, 35% only, and you can't take another bite of that apple.
At the end of the high school project, they won't give us the remainder on the individual
Not
project?
if you submitted it like that. So we have the option of submit individual projects, or as a whole, or once the project is completed. So on these projects, so I was not aware of that. I thought once a project is completed, say we do a project this year, you had to submit it for reimbursement that year for the following year. You don't have to do that, and
can hold
that's...
it?
Yes.
But
can
you
hold
have to
it.
have enough cash flow to...
Correct.
Okay.
So I think
No, it's good you checked.
That's touched
Yeah.
on future slides, but that is touched on. But yes, I did
so,
check
but
on
that's
that.
good information to know, especially because, and the reason why we were talking about it during the CIP is we were talking about capital improvement projects that we wanted to do in the next couple of years that would be pulled out of this repair and renovation for Peacedale, for Matunic, for West Kingston. And then, so then the question would then be, I think, to the town is, do we submit for reimbursement immediately and only get 35, or do we defer that reimbursement until the project is complete and hope we get the 50? But we would get 35 no matter what.
Correct.
But it would also be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later. So that, again, I think that's a town council decision to make, but I'm glad we're vetting it out and having that discussion.
Just a suggestion on this slide, I don't know if others agree, but I would lump this high school and Curtis Corner under the same line and total that and highlight it. Because that's really what we're talking about right now with the pay-go. Because it starts getting, again, it gets more confusing. You start, more numbers you add into it. And then maybe bracket the rest and say, you know.
Yep. This is how it appeared on that necessity of school construction. That's how it appeared, but I can change that. Yeah, no
It
problem.
just makes it easier from a communication standpoint.
And just one of the other clarifications that came up at our CIP meeting from our town council and school committee and our school department was, is the 50% up to 117 million, or is it 50% up to 150 million? I don't know if we have that answer yet, but.
So it's 50% on for the high school project. So between the high school and the athletics fields, it's 117 million. We have eligible for 150 million, 50% on these other projects. So that would be doing the other projects as well. In terms of the high school and athletic fields, we are eligible for up to 117 million. Yes. Excuse me.
Did that help, Mike? Okay.
So.
That's very good news.
So PAYGO funding can only be used to fund approved project-related expenses, and this will not increase eligible state aid to the town. And then each project starts receiving housing aid reimbursement the fiscal year after submission. Again, not necessarily completion, but when it's submitted. The town can submit projects both individually or grouped together for housing aid. And then I get into, once reimbursements start on a given project, no additional bonuses can be added later. And that's where, again, if you submit a project before you get the 50% or before the bonuses are achieved, that's where you can't add the bonuses later. But if all projects are submitted for reimbursement once the high school project is completed and the town is successful in achieving the additional bonuses, then all of those projects would receive the 15% extra. And from here, I was kind of looking for a little guidance on what we are looking for PAYGO. We're eligible for up to $9 million, but are we going for 3, 4, 6, 9? I don't. So that's where I was looking for a little guidance as well.
And I think that is what the town council wants from us. That's my understanding. So I guess our question with the guidance of Field and you guys, because on Monday night they're having a town council meeting, and if they're going to vote on what to do with upfront reimbursement. Am I saying that right? Or okay. Do we want to say up to 3 million? Do we want to say, like, do we want to have specifics? Is it for the mapping out of the projects? Like we'll say, because for the balcony on the auditorium, because of the choral room, because of the classroom size, and it equals 2.8 million. That's what we're requesting upfront.
So I think it's important Monday to prioritize with the people here that are going to be living with this school and making them really knowing the most what is going to be needed. We'll prioritize it, we'll put a price next to it, and let the council decide, once again, then they can decide where they want to get these funds or whatever. But I think simplicity is very important in all of this. Even, Ryan, I don't like rounding numbers, but if you're going like $15,198,622.41 or whatever, right? I'm exaggerating a little, but that just adds to the confusion. If you're saying 16.12 million or whatever, I think that's important too, because people are adding this stuff in their minds just like this. So, but ultimately the town council is going to make the decision. They're the ones that will make these tough decisions. But if we go to them with so they can make a well-informed decision on what the priorities are to recruit, maintain, and keep this school that we're building, I think that'll go a long way and help out.
From a finance end, it would be helpful if we could come out with a round number up to, right? To the manager's point, we can a la carte it out, but ultimately, Brian ideally will run a number, right? Based on maybe the worst case scenario. If you approve up to, you're asking for $4 million, what is the impact of allocating those funds if used? Because we're asking that to be built into a new contingency factor. Hope is it's not used, right? We still can keep the project under 150, but this provides latitude. So that way Brian can, on this slide, say, okay, at this impact, here's what it bakes down to the tax rate, the additional cents that would be needed to fund that. If we're at 154 million by the time the project's done, right? Is that a fair assessment?
It is, and I just wanted to hop on one of the points you made there, because it's a good point. This is, in essence, a contingency, because, again, if we come in under budget on something, we could then, say we issue, just to use a number, $4 million in PAYGO. If we don't need that, again, we could then, when it's time to issue the bond, when the project is completed, we could issue the bond for 146 million instead of 150. So we can recapture this, and so there is ability there, and that is a good point.
Want to do that now, or?
Are you done?
Okay. Did you get a copy of the Kate sent along the presentation with marked up? And I think if we can move ahead, just go, okay, yeah. So in this, this was removed, so we're not looking to, we can go to the next one.
And just to clarify, this is the same presentation we had at our last meeting, just with additional notes from our experts on it, of what was accepted and what was not accepted by ourselves, and then working with the town council also.
And this was another reduction, so we can move on. Another reduction. So this was here we rejected this reduction, so that's we would need the 544,300. We rejected this removal, so that's another 597,500.
Can I just ask a question
Sure.
about this? Because this is something that we had in some discussions. One of the questions that came up is that with the soundproofing that would be required, is a movable wall plausible in this scenario? Or because the reason we're asking is because the band room, as it stands, would be difficult to use other periods just because of the amount of equipment that needs to be moved. But a choral room could actually be used for other educational purposes during the day. If we had a soundproof movable wall there, the whole space could easily be used for other functions. We had talked at one time about like a black box room, just for lack of a better expression. This would sort of present something like that. So, well, it says choral and band. That question is one that I have, and we've had, is because of it becomes basically a multi-purpose space at that point in time. The choral room. So just to stress, in its current state, with let's say a fixed wall there, which obviously I know the soundproofing has to be priority. That choral room could certainly be used for other purposes. Let's say it's being used for the purposes of music 4 out of 8 periods. It still affords you a rather large space to use for some other things with minimal amount of moving of things. If it can be expanded into a full space, it's another multi-purpose space for the community. So just things to think about. I know you don't have an answer for that right now about there, but I do want to point out that while it says choral and band, it's not strictly a choral room. That there would be other educational purposes as well.
So there are cost implications of that, like we have a number that's going to go up prospectively with the partition wall that's soundproof, right? So we're already over budget. So I guess we would need to know that number.
It's just a question.
Or we're going to ask for an up to amount with some additional contingency to factor in things like this.
It's just something to consider in terms of how it is right now. Certainly something that we need. As we talked about, this wasn't really a want. This was a need. But I did want to stress that in conversations that choral room does not need to exclusively be a choral room. That it in fact could be used for other purposes, even with a fixed wall there.
Could we go back one slide to the auditorium? Just again, to give people in the audience, if they're just seeing this meeting, perspective, we have gone back to our experts and our music theater directors with this plan. We did reject it to not lose the balcony, but we did task our experts with how much reduction could be on the balcony so that we possibly were under that $544,000 cost, removing part of the bay or additional service spaces that might not be necessary. So we might see a different value come out at the end of this.
Go one more.
Just last point on that. We are carrying other contingencies. The other option is that we could add alt this. A partition wall is pretty easy, correct me if I'm wrong, to add alt out. So we could put it in and get it priced out, so.
This was to shrink the educational spaces, also rejected by both our table and the town council. This was accepted, so this was different, making changes to the exterior facade that had been there, and it was accepted by everybody to, again, this is a reduction. And this was just images that the community had voted on as inspiration for what potentially, I don't think I have the right number here, hang on a second. So we have, is that right? 1,500, 15 million?
In the second slide, it shows, I think, the breakdown.
So I have 1.5 for those rejected, okay, and then we were, so we accepted 4.8 million reductions, and so that gave us the 1.5 that we would now be continued to be over. The layout of this is walking with me. All
And
right.
we also on there do have the potential fire department fee reduction, which, to my understanding, we don't have that, on paper yet. So I think, that's something also we would carry forward in the, our ask, potentially for PAYGO.
So if we're doing the math, what is so if we want to put a number for the PAYGO, for the dollar figure of what we rejected is 1.4, so we can just say 1.5 million just to have a buffer, right? So the 1.5 million over is added to which number?
500. Fire department fee reduction. So you'd have to add another $500,000 there.
So that's who I was just texting just now to, we've been waiting anxiously for an answer, but we haven't received it yet.
Okay.
So to be safe, you should go for $2 million.
So 2 million, and then if we wanted to explore the ad alternates.
I think the only thing, if we're going to bring it to council that way, and I totally agree, we don't have a firm answer. The hope is that's going to come off, but we specify to council what this is going to be used for. So if that comes off, we make the pledge right up front. If that fee comes off, we're not going to reallocate it to something else.
Yeah.
It comes off.
Yeah.
We're not adding anything back. We're not adding
Correct.
a track back in.
But you want,
stuff like that.
you want the authorization from the town council if it doesn't come through that you can cover it. So you want the authorization, but you don't necessarily have to obligate.
So I just want to offer some commentary before you determine a number. I want to make sure everybody understands the context that we're in still. We have deliberately spent a lot of time in schematic design because we want to get it right. It has impacts on schedule, it has impacts on costs. This is still the first step. I can assure you that the design team, as we have done so to date, will continue to find cost-saving measures. We're not looking to add back in the track, for example. But I want to caution you to make sure that you ask for consideration of a number up to a sufficient amount that allows things to change. Dave mentioned a number of things. Let's not forget that a significant part of California, Los Angeles area is burnt to the ground. What a perfect reason for construction managers to ask for, cost increases because of material and all kinds of things. So I don't want you to go in too low, right? I'm also not asking you to be ridiculous and say, we want up to 9 million just in case. But I don't want you to cut it to 3 million when it should maybe be 4.5 million. It's not like this is just lumped in extra money to use. It's being allocated to a proper contingency, and all these projects will continually be estimated and tracked, et cetera. I just am suggesting that you may not want to go back to the well multiple times. It may be not the best optics. So I recognize Gilbane will need room to continue to estimate. The design team will need some room to continue to provide perhaps the aesthetics that you're looking for in the new high school. So that was my only comment, is to give yourself enough of a buffer, and we certainly can defend and explain that as necessary.
I think part of what Phil just brought up too is possibly tasking our experts to give us a number with that breakdown. So we have the proper breakdown if there has been a change to the number in the auditorium. So we have the right numbers in front of us to present to town council for Monday. I think, you know, that'd be good to have something in writing. Not that I want to give you guys more work, but I think a suggestion would be helpful for us.
Yeah, and one thing that I just wanted to make sure that I bring up is that, yes, we've moved on from the track and the second level fitness area, and we had talked about how that the bump out gym was not aesthetically pleasing. So we were asking for a different place to be found for that where it made sense. But I'm not sure we know what an additional cost would be for that, if at all. So I think that's why it's important to listen to what Phil is saying and make sure that we're not going back to the well a bunch of times, because we don't know exactly what that's gonna look like, right? I know it's not going to be to the same degree as the track. Otherwise, we just keep the track and the fitness room on there. It's going to be less than that amount, but it's probably not going to be zero either to be able to do that. So I just wanted I bring that up.
Whatever that number is has to be developed quickly, because Brian has very short amount of time.
It's
generate-
only, we're talking about Monday.
Right.
We're not talking about 2
And
weeks from now.
So we know what we have here, right? And the only caution I would say to Phil, and I would love to add a bunch of money to the project and say, that gives us a buffer, but I can see the counter argument saying, get what you need, because we made a commitment originally to keep it under 150. We're asking for some latitude here. If you're asking for a bit of a blank check, that's a lot of trust. So the council can speak to that, but I just, caution we also don't over ask as well. If we have to go back because of some valid reason, we go back because it's a valid reason. Like if we're over budget because our core project is coming over budget because of inflation and higher building costs, that's a legit reason, but I think it needs to be, personally, as a member of the committee, I think it needs to be brought to council based on that merit, not just, hey, we may encounter costs, because we are carrying other contingencies. If we weren't, I'd be more in favor of writing a little bit higher check, but we are carrying other contingencies.
My preference is the same. I'd rather go back. Transparency is everything here. We're spending taxpayer money, right? So I'd rather go back and do it incrementally when needed. Of course, building some type of buffer there, but when you start talking $1 million or $1.5 million more in a buffer, I'm not so sure that's the right call. But once again, that's up to the town council to decide. But I think the closer the number, the better. And if we have to go back, we go back.
And to Jim and Luke's point, PAYGO funding is available to the town until June 30th, 2027. So if we do need to go back, we have ample time.
So as of right now, the numbers that we just looked at was the 1.4 million plus this 548 for the union fire department fee. And so that brings us to 1.9, 1.95, 1.96. We have the list of ad alternates. If we want to include those, I think they need to be listed out so that the town council knows what that is, so that we know what is the ad alternates. Is it something that is strictly a nice to have, or is it something that would bring educational value to the program? And so if we were going to do that piece, right, so that is a 2.7, 2.8 million.
I do have a question, because I remember talking about the ad alternates.
I'm
but
drawing blank on
what do
them.
we have, Phil, do you remember what we had for ad alternates?
Terrence might
It's
have them.
a big number.
You might
So-
have them. Yeah.
And again, just for those who don't know what an add alternate is, it's priced separately as part of the project, so that way we can either put it in or not.
It was, our teachers had programmatic features that they would have liked to have had, but they weren't necessarily program dependent.
Okay, looks like the first add alternate was for the choral room for $597,500.
We popped that one back in already.
I know, but this is where these numbers
Yeah.
are coming from. The second alternate is bathroom wet wall tile for $98,300. And then the third alternate was lightning protection for $86,800. I think if you add those three together, you get the
That's
$782,600.
Okay, so
Nope.
really, it's not, because we've already popped the
Right.
core room back in there. Okay.
Yeah, these were all before those decisions were made.
And can I just ask a question on the schematics, because I know we've looked at this a couple times, but in this price, the greenhouse is included? Okay, because I don't want to forget about that, because that's an important aspect of what we do. So I think that's something we need to take into account.
I remember we had a discussion on this, and I think the decision was made, there was a high cost to build like a custom greenhouse, on a range of $250,000 or higher. Mark's going like this.
I think it was closer
And
to
so,
350.
one of the things we talked about is the current greenhouse, which is acted fine, I think was built by the school, right? So we could probably get a modular structure or something off the shelf that can go on a pad for a lot less, and that could come maybe later in the project. We would probably have the money, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember this conversation, but it's likely for the amount of money we'd be talking for more modular structure that it would be just a bought item. Am I wrong on that conversation, or Phil? Yeah, man.
We did discuss possibly rolling that into the FF&E budget as a piece
That was
of
the other
equipment.
thing,
But there is costs associated with the greenhouse that have not yet been estimated or included in this. So I absolutely respect the discussion about going back a couple times for legitimate reasons, but if you wanted a little bit of a buffer, that greenhouse is an example of one of those items that has not yet been fleshed out and could be incorporated into this gap funding, for example.
So I think to use the greenhouse as an example, I think that is a tough discussion to have, because I think the dollar figure that was used kind of as a placeholder was $350,000 for a greenhouse, which seemed exorbitant considering the one that they have right now, again, was built by the students and the faculty and a long time ago, my understanding as well. And I'm not saying anything negative about it. It's valid and it is part of our program and it's necessary. But I think what needs to be fleshed out is what's the scope of the greenhouse? Like, is that something that could be worked on, again, rebuilt by the students in the CTE program, kind of like they're doing with I saw the pictures of the little mock pharmacy that's being built right now, which is super cool. So I guess that's more of the discussion, is what is needed for this greenhouse. And
I think the two big pieces that it's like everything you're saying, I completely agree, and I think that's a good idea too. I think it's just the heat. Whether it's portable like the propane is right now, and the electricity. I think those are the two big pieces that we just don't want to lose sight of, because it does need to be heated in the winter, and you do need electricity. But other than that, I think a lot of things you've just mentioned, getting students involved in it would make sense. Yep.
All right, so if we're going to be settling in on a number, we're looking at about a $2 million. The $2 million range, taking in all accounts right now with what we're looking at as far as what we've added, what we've rejected, and a couple add alternates. So I guess the question is, what are we going to the town council to say? Are we going 2 million? Are we going 2.5 with it spelled out as to what that equals? What equals that? Excuse me. And if something else comes up that we need to go back for more, then we say we go back for more.
To open the bidding, I'm going to make a motion to request authorization of $3 million. And purely for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion?
So one suggestion I was going to have is, I talked a little bit earlier about the fire permit fee, and the manager's been working actively on this with the district, I think that we're hopeful, I'll put it that way, that will at least in large part be waived. There's going to be some residual because it still has to require an inspection on cost money. So maybe that when we present to the council, say, it's for that fee. However, if that fee doesn't get realized, we can roll it into other contingency. So if that goes away, that's part of our contingency that we can use for other, if things like the greenhouse and other come up. Since, we have a good relationship with the fire district, I don't think it's a great look to be charging the town unbonded money. So it's a suggestion to maybe get us a little lower, Dave, on the ask. Maybe it's 2.5, but that 5 million is a little more flexible in between.
Yeah, so one thing, so I am going back and forth with UFD now, right? But one thing's for certain, it's not settled. That's certain. So I don't want to give anyone any hope, nor do I want to say it's not going to be settled. It's just not settled. So, but I am more comfortable with the 2.5, but it's up to the council. If the school building committee wants to go higher and let the council negotiate that down, that's up to them. They're the policy people. So I think that we give them a range and let them decide.
Is that the end of discussion? So we have, at the moment, the motion is up to 3 million.
I will, if there is no further discussion, I will amend my motion to request authorization of up to $2.5 million from the town council.
Second that amendment.
We have a motion and a second for the amendment, so now we have to vote on the amendment. So that's not the final decision, that's the wording of the motion, right? If I'm not mistaken. We have to vote on the wording, or are we just going with the amended number?
Can I amend it again?
Well, the way to get around this would be
I can rescind.
For Dave to
I could
withdraw
rescind my
his
motion.
motion.
Okay.
I have one question before we go anywhere of that with the discussion. With the discussion at this table, should we say have the amendment as 2.5 with potential to come back later if needed for more pay-go? Just as part of the motion that we're going to make right now. I'm getting way in the weeds. I'm looking at everybody, not just Kate. Or is it just saying 2.5, I think, suffices for what we need for
I think so, otherwise it gets a little too...
Okay, that's
it
fine
gets too
with me.
mucky, I think.
Yep, I'm just the maintenance guy. I'm turning my mic off.
So do we need to make a motion to rescind, or he just rescinds?
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, so the motion's withdrawn. So if somebody wants to make a motion with a particular number. Come on, Bob.
All right, I will. It goes against my better judgment, but I will make the motion to set our pay-go ask at 2.5 million.
I'll second that.
And we're back open for discussion. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Just clarifying that the motion is a request up to $2.5 million.
Up to 2.5 million. No further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, so that passes. So on Monday, the ask for the town council will be up to 2.5 million in pay-go. What were we calling it? Upfront cost, advanced reimbursement. No, because it's technically called pay-go, so just because we want to change the name of it doesn't mean it's changed. Okay. Next item. Bob, our over-under is way over. It's 10 of. All right, so our next item is agenda item 5, approval to submit South Kingstown High School building schematic design to RIDE School Building Authority for review. Phil, do you mind coming up here for a sec? And just give a quick, what the purpose of this is. There was just a little bit of confusion and discussion with the town council as far as, did the town need to have approval? Like, what level approval is this for?
Sure. The RIDE School Building Authority has a series of submissions that we need to make so that they can review what you are proposing to build and what they are willing to reimburse for, right, the project. First step is schematic design, then design development, then construction documentation. When RIDE identified the participants of the school building committee, they intentionally picked titles from town, school, community, so that this body was diverse and qualified to approve submission of these projects to RIDE to review. So what we want is school building committee approval to submit the documentation that we've assembled to date for schematic design to RIDE for them to review, come back to us with a series of questions and comments.
Add to that, it's actually a recommendation from the school building committee to the town council and to the school committee to submit to RIDE. It's not the school building committee that's submitting it to RIDE, it's the town council and the, so, right.
So that's a little bit different, so I want to make sure we're clear. So we'll be making a recommendation here, and the next meeting is the town council on Monday. So it will actually be the town council. We're making a recommendation to the town council to approve this submittal.
And the school committee.
So then but the school committee won't be able to vote.
Ultimately, the goal is to submit this on the 15th.
Okay.
So
Oh, all right, that's fine. So then we just need to make sure that that's on our school committee. You're not my chair anymore, though.
so
I have to remember.
The 13th, the 14th, and the 15th
Okay.
are the important dates.
So we can do, so this works, the timing of this meeting works very well. So we make a recommendation to the town council, they'll vote on Monday. We make a recommendation to the school committee, they will vote on Tuesday, and we will have, hopefully, approval from both bodies by then. The only problem I'm going to suggest here is we didn't have that information on Tuesday, right? And so we were having that was a discussion we were having these chambers on Tuesday night about presenting something to the town council and then expecting them to vote on it right away instead of having time to digest and explore and what have you. So, but I'm glad we're having that conversation now, because then that gives us an opportunity between now and Monday to get the information to the town council. But it's less than ideal, but also there's a due date to it.
The goal was to submit this to RIDE on January 15th.
Okay, so that's the goal, but is that like a?
Yeah, so in our experience, there are some communities that just get school committee approval and not town council approval. If you want to include town council in that approval, that's fine too. There is no, for us, the submission doesn't have to be the 15th. That's not impeding us from continuing on to DD. It could be the 15th, it could be the week after that. So I'll defer back to you in terms of getting all three, getting both town council and school committee. We have had experience where we've just gotten school committee.
I prefer both, just because we just want a consistent process with it, number one. Number two, the other piece then I would ask is, going forward, if we could have ahead of time kind of a schedule set out so that we can prepare each body coming up. We're going to need approval for submission at this stage, at this stage, at this stage. So it's a little, we're trying very hard to make sure that we're not spraying anything on any of our bodies, so.
To that point, it's not on our agenda right now on the town council. We had discussion of the pay-go and the cost reductions, but I was not aware that this was something that was going to council. So we'll have to, we can amend the agenda, and we'll have to get some backup immediately. But to Kate's point, I would always presume that council is going to be part of the process. I understand it's maybe not required, but, you know.
I will speak on that. The town council must be in this process. That's what the voters were told. That's what, you know, this has been the understanding, right? I think the checks and balances have to be there. I strongly recommend that, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. Once again, transparency is everything, right? We're spending a lot of money here. So that, but with Luke, yes, we do need to amend the agenda, and we need to do it quickly.
Well, so my question is, can we, the next town council meeting would be the 27th, and the next school committee meeting would be the 28th. Can we wait till those meetings so that we have adequate time to inform both bodies?
Yes.
Okay.
Because then we could then distribute a package in
Perfect.
advance. It does not impede us from progressing.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Okay, so I think that's the path that will go on for that. So what I would suggest is if we could have somebody at this current table, should we table it as long as we have another school building committee meeting beforehand?
I think that makes sense. Since we're moving everything out, and I'm sure we will have another meeting before that time. That way we can do it the way we've done it in the past, which is it's much more smooth. We know what we're looking at. We know we're going to make a recommendation, and then it moves on to town council and the school committee. I think that if we can, we're going to meet before the 27th, 28th is my guess.
Yep.
So, yeah. So
The
there you go.
16th.
I think that's the better process.
Okay, so we're going to have another school building committee meeting on the 16th. And so if I could have somebody table on business item number 5 to our next school building committee meeting.
I'll make a motion to table it till our next school building committee meeting on the 16th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nobody's opposed, so that passes. So we'll table this till the 16th, and then we'll make sure that there's a package put together. We'll make sure the town council and the school committee get it ahead of time, and we can add those items to the respective agendas. Thank you guys for all of that. New business item number 6, strictly for discussion, the Curtis Corner Athletic Field update.
So this will be very brief. We'll give you an update on the concept that we're developing for Curtis Corner, and then our approach, and then I'll mention the date that we're looking to put the drawings together so that Gilbane can estimate that scope of work. So next slide real quick. This represents our current concept site plan for Curtis Corner that does indicate an adaptive reuse of a portion of Curtis Corner in the future. That is that rectangular floor plan that you see near the curved parking. We're coming in off of a new entrance off Curtis Corner Road, sweeping by pickleball courts, which we are going to identify as a future project, but making sure we have the area for it. Parking area on a grass lot illustrated by that rectangle, coming down with new parking in front of the existing admin building. About 50 parking spaces on the right side of the road for the athletic field. You see the existing tennis courts. Now coming To the left, there is what we believe is an abandoned well. So we're following up with Brian and Parks and Rec to make sure it is, because our road wants to go right through it. If for some reason it had to remain, which we don't think it does, we would circuitously connect back to Onion Street as you go into the park. We don't think we're going to have to do that. We'll go through it. We are identifying the 8-lane track, the synthetic field that's wider with the bleachers, new bleachers, sort of tightened up to the existing concession stand and field house that is there. So we are working on the drawings. We anticipate to have them done by the end of next week. We will give those drawings to Gilbane to estimate.
Does anybody have any questions for Phil?
Just could you speak to the adaptive reuse of the Curtis Corner? What's
Sure,
inside
I'm going to go to the next slide. So the next slide shows a couple floor plans that we've developed. We want to review this with Terry Lynch and others within the next couple of weeks. We are going to have to discuss, and we will have a certain scope of work that Gilbane can estimate for. The inside portion that you see here is not reimbursable, and for all intent and purposes really not part of the project right now. It may be later. But this was just our initial concept for some locker rooms, restrooms, team room, weight room, storage room, team room, offices for officials, referees, etc. So this was just our concept. This is absent Terry's input and others, which we want to have. We are not going to have this for Gilbane to estimate. Gilbane will be estimating lopping off and closing and securing the building, but not this inner part. And then this can follow a parallel path with the project, but that's what we're thinking. One thing we do think that Gilbane should estimate is some of the refresh to the restrooms and the existing press box concessions building that's going to be remaining on site, because we did get some feedback that restrooms and stuff like that is reimbursable. So I do think we want to capture some of that in the estimate. That's the end of the presentation.
Any further questions here? Thank you. And then refresh my memory, it was beginning or mid-February?
Mid-February.
Okay, mid-February.
Mark, is that all right? Yeah.
Any questions from anybody yet? All right. Go ahead.
I think this has already been asked and answered. There's nothing in the plan about any storage facility on the field, correct?
We probably anticipate, after speaking with Terry and others, that he will want us to include maybe a shed or a box or something like that. So
Right, it doesn't need to be conditioned space,
correct,
but
there
it
may
does
be
have
some
to be dry.
accessory structures, which has also been brought up for the high school as well, which is a piece, that's another example of something small that's not yet included in the project, but is needed.
Mahoney and Sons can donate it.
One son, two daughters.
All right. Anyone else on this topic?
No, just real quick, I want to thank Phil and the team for doing all the legwork on this. I know this is taking a lot to get to the point we're at, but again, doing the extra work to show us what keeping Curtis could look like, what keeping the current press box and bathrooms look like. I really appreciate the effort that's gone into this.
It's just an example of the entire team working towards cost savings and being not only innovative, but responsible. That's all.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our business items. I will open it back up for a short, sweet, and condensed community comment if anybody has anything to discuss on the rest of the agenda. Not rehashing the geothermal, Dorald.
Okay, but I need some clarification. So I asked a couple of questions. One was anybody in the, I know what you said tonight. I know what your positions are, but I asked if anybody on this committee would be interested in going and looking at what's going on up at Watertown, because I would be happy to drive.
My understanding is Massachusetts and Rhode Island have different, when it comes to,
No.
Dorald, here's the thing, you're not going to want to hear what we have to say. So,
No, I've heard what you said.
right, and you
Right.
don't like the answer. And so it's going to end up just being a back and forth dialogue about that. And you trying to convince me and or everybody else at this table to agree with you. And while I understand that and I appreciate that, we have made our positions clear, and it is also the town council's ultimate decision as to what direction to go in.
Okay, but the one point I made tonight about the number of wells that was in the proposal is there's quite a discrepancy there. You had $2.8 million for 40 wells, but 20 wells are all you need to provide the heating and cooling for half the school. So if 20 wells will do it, why do you need 30? And if you don't need 30, how much less money would it how many wells do you really need? So to not have that answer, to me, for you as a committee, not have that answer, because then the $1.6 million differential could go down, is, to me, it's irresponsible. All right, so that's the end of that one. Now, but on the investment tax credits, so roof-mounted chillers are not considered, they're not considered renewable energy sources, okay? So the $15,600,000 you'll pay to put roof-mounted chillers in the school, for that amount of money, you're going to get no money back. There's no investment tax credits for doing that. Now, the $17,200,000, so a portion of that is for chillers for one portion of the school, and the rest of it's geothermal. So I never got the real number, so I'm guessing like 10 million is for geo and 7 million is for the chillers, okay? So you have $10 million, of which you could get 30 to 40%, depending on how much of the content of the materials and equipment is U.S. made, but most of the geothermal systems in the United States are made in the United States. So you could probably get that 10% also. That's 40% on 10 million. That's $4 million. So to say, well, we're not going to go try for it because it'll probably go away and we may not get it. That's not an answer. That's not an answer that I want to hear. It's not an answer which any taxpayer wants to hear. I mean, we have 2 members of our town council today that don't pay a single penny in property taxes, okay? Now, but they're going to make decisions on how much everybody else pays. And lastly, okay, this is my 8th year, right? I don't want to do this anymore. Tonight I'm missing watching my grandson play a varsity basketball game. And I'd much rather be there. But I keep coming to these meetings because I feel like I'm representing not just the taxpayers, but the students, okay? When I wrote the letter to the papers before the vote that said why I'm voting yes. And that actually, if you've read that email I sent, the differential between that winning, getting passed and not passing was 350 people's votes, okay? I don't know whether or not my letter influenced anybody, but it's possible that some were. And remember, I was there that night with all of you. We were sweating it out, weren't we, okay? We were praying that that thing was gonna pass, and when it did, we were high-fiving and hugging and everything else, okay? I'm in this 100% to make this town a better place. And I just want you to remember that, because otherwise I wouldn't be coming for 8 years.
So I'm gonna just stay there so I can respond to you. I've been here 8 years with you. Number one, go to your grandson's basketball game. Family first, always. I hope you feel okay, because you don't sound well right now, and I'm worried about you. Number two. Number three, we absolutely appreciate your passion and what you bring to the table, but at the same time, we have votes. When votes are taken, we have to step forward. We have to make our decisions. We have to keep the ball rolling. We have process, we have policy, we have procedure. You know what it's like. You were in the engineering world. You get it. You have your life cycle that you have to constantly work through. We have to keep that moving forward. And I appreciate that you have these questions and you want your answers, but at the same time, we also have work that votes were made and they have to move forward. We can't keep trying to get a vote recycled through. It's unfortunately not how government works. And so we have to move forward with the decisions that were made by the powers that be. And none of this is a slight to you, Mr. Beasley, and you know that. And but go to your grandson's basketball games, please. Thank you, sir. All right. Anybody else? Community comment? All right. Future meeting, we already discussed that. We have one. So we have the town council meeting coming up on Monday. For those of you who, if you have a desire to be there, I will be there. And then our next school building committee meeting will be on the 16th, back to the 6 p.m. start time. And I believe that is it. So with that said, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? We're adjourning at 8:11. Thank you.
Just a reminder to turn off your microphone.